You see, these two people are the kind of villains that reminded me no matter how low a tier list goes, it can never go low enough for some villains to be included. And I have gone very low, trust me. Yeah, I called it ChatGPT tier, seeing as the Duffer Brothers had ChatGPT tabs open on their computers, I thought it might be fitting. But also, I realized that no matter how bad of a word I chose, like shit or dog water, ChatGPT or AI tier just sounded so much worse, also more lazy. You can't write a character so serious and intimidating to then not even make her explode one single subplot. Nope, the only explosion that ever happened was by this guy, Murray, the weird hacker who somehow hacked his way into the script to include himself as main cast. That's the only way I can explain why he was at the graduation. Point is, Dr. K and Robert, they're not part of the list, not even ChatGPT tier. They sucked. They were boring and not at all integral to the story in the least bit, well, other than Robert taking out Callie, and in his defense, the guy had skipped the Lost Sister episode, so he wasn't aware that Callie could be considered main cast. But since we did mention the Soviets, let's address them real quick. First of all, insane amount of NPC vibes in terms of villainous. Is that a word? Villainous? And in case you don't know what NPC means, I'm jealous. Must be nice to live a life. Anyway, it stands for non-player character in, video games, basically. It's like side characters that give you quests and whatnot. They were mostly lifeless, like in-game NPCs, the Soviets, but still kind of entertaining. And if a villain won't be integral to the story, I prefer them to be entertaining, on the more funny side than serious. Like when Colonel Ozarov said, "I think your friend need a doctor. Good thing we have the very best." Good one. Oh no, what's that? A meaningless blue substance attached to a big syringe? Another villain with round glasses and a bald head. The classic NPC doctor look, I would say. He injects Steve and Robin with what looks like is causing them to have the time of their life, and it made me wonder where I could get some of that stuff for myself, to take the edge off a little bit. You see, these videos do take quite a bit to make, and don't get me wrong, it's fun, but your subscribe and like is basically like that blue substance the doctor injects Steve. I'll be cheerfully laughing all day long, so go ahead. Inject me with that dose of happiness. I'm waiting. Here's my cheek. Subscribe and like, basically. Thank you. I'm already feeling much better. Anyway, the Colonel, the doc, and Stepanov, who was that general that said they had 1 year to open a gate or they'd be fired or something. I don't know what happens in the Soviet army. Maybe they have to do some push-ups. 1 year to open the gate. Otherwise, you do 20 push-ups. 20? Oh god, please let this work. So yeah, they're NPC tier villains. They weren't bad, just a lot of NPC energy, Grigory, though, that Russian Terminator that decided to kill Hopper because he accidentally bumped into his chair at the restaurant once. Now, he was quite an interesting villain. I lied. He sucked too. He was boring. The guy just kept randomly appearing on screen with his guns blazing, and I didn't really care for him, I had no interest in following his storyline, because look, I'll be honest, I think he was just a spin-off planned by the writers. And you may ask, what's a spin-off planned? Well, you see, spin-off plans have been a thing in franchises. Take The Conjuring. They opened up with the Annabelle doll, meaning if The Conjuring is a hit, they could pivot to make a different movie with Annabelle. So I think the Russian guy was just a Terminator arc planned that, hey, if people like it, or if enough people are interested in it, they could just reanimate him or something, from that gate opening machine explosion somehow, and do a spin-off. Actually, yeah, you know what? This gives me an idea. I'll put the Terminator guy into the spin-off planned tier, which is definitely higher than ChatGPT tier, but lower than NPC tier because they lack any sort of character depth. Anyway, while we're still talking about the Soviets, let's get rid of these two guys real quick. Warden Melnikov and Yuri Ismailov, that playing guy. Well, Melnikov is just your regular guy who enjoys watching prisoners murdered by a Demogorgon because, well, he's evil. Say hi to N-tier Melnikov. Not N-tier, but NPC tier. Yuri, on the other hand, had quite the twist. Like, the man actually felt genuinely honest initially. Like, I did not see the betrayal coming, and I loved it. So if you remember, Joyce, in hopes of freeing Hopper, grabs a bunch of cash, around $40,000, which is around $160K in today's money. I was just curious. And together with Murray, they hit the road. They arrive to Yuri's base, only for them to be then poisoned by him with coffee. He also sells out Hopper, who's sitting under a blanket eating peanut butter with his very, very dirty hands. One very extensive plain karate fight scene later, Yuri is defeated. A villain that seemed like an ally, and I guess in the end still served as an ally since he flew them back, but who also had charisma. Not a lot, just some. Very little, but enough to... Nope, okay, no charisma, none. I still decided to put him into the probably not NPC tier in terms of villainous due to his twists and many joke attempts. I do miss when Stranger Things, used to have some twists in it though. And no, Mr. Whatsit being Henry was not a twist, it was a reveal and the beginning to the most boring storyline of all time. It's time we talk about a more interesting villain, like the Demogorgon, the very creature behind the strange in Stranger Things. Without it, the show would have been called just Things, or Some Things, like it was in Season 5. Ah, yes. The good old times when Demogorgons weren't just NPCs, but actually felt threatening. Back when they were snatching people off by a slight cut on their finger. And I want to start with the Russian prison Demogorgon, because I think this is a Demogorgon that broke free from the Mind Flayer's mind or flare or something. I mean, look, it's doing its own thing. It's kind of like operating on its own. But saying Russian Demogorgon is a bit too long, so let's just call it Dimitri. You know what? Let's call it Dimigri, because Demogorgon. Okay, so first things first. Dimigri not being able to open a gate and escape makes sense since it's in Russia, but for some reason, when it was captured in Hawkins, it still couldn't escape. The backstory is a bit blurry, but generally speaking, Dimigri, in my opinion, was definitely a villain. Especially when Hopper cuts its head off in the 1v1. That gave me a lot of Dark Souls-like game vibes. I get that ultimately it was programmed to do one thing and one thing only. It was to kill prisoners. So there is an argument that it should be an NPC tier, but if you think about it, it did decide to go there in the first place. Like, it didn't try to escape in Hawkins or wherever that was. So maybe it was bored, maybe it wanted something different, so we can immediately rule out the NPC tier. And since it was a pretty cool monster, it's easily higher than probably not NPC tier. So Dimigri, definitely a villain tier. And as for the rest of the Demogorgons, well, excluding Season 5, they're definitely a villain tier for me. The Demogorgon is what started it all, and it's what, used to creep me the hell out. And it's also what was left out of Season 5 finale, because the writers confused plot armor fatigue with demo fatigue. While we're talking about demo stuff, Demobats. Demobats, Demobats, Demobats. I'm still not over how these creatures existed solely to kill off Eddie. Like, I can't accept how everyone's got the plot armor, but that guy didn't. In fact, he had the anti-plot armor, if you will, where to make sure you're dead, a new creature is written into the script literally only to get you killed. And look, I'll level with you. During my research, just so I wouldn't miss out on any villains I couldn't remember, I resorted to this website called Villains Wiki. They've actually got everyone there, including this guy, Raymond Carroll. No, I also have no idea who he is, and I'm assuming you don't either. He apparently was in that Lost Sister episode as the ex-doctor of Dr. Brenner. Kali and Eleven go and ask him questions about the experiments of something, but, that's a villain from the past, so I won't really include him in the list either. Anyway, point is, there are these sections in that website that explain what goals the villains have. Whether they failed or succeeded is also pointed. Every single villain has a detail of if they were successful or not, except the Demobats. Their goal apparently is serve Vecna or kill Vecna's enemies, but whether that goal was fulfilled or not is empty. Even the people who filled out the wiki page had no clue what these things were ever supposed to be. They were probably like, yo, Mike, what do you think about the Demobats? Dude, I have no idea, man. Just put serve Vecna. Okay, I mean, I guess so. Did they succeed though? Yeah, let's just circle back on that. Yeah, we'll just circle back on that one. And I mean, where do you put them in the tier list, you know? I have no idea. But because they killed Eddie, I'll put them in the ChatGPT tier. F them. We all know the Mind Flayer is pretty sick. In fact, I love that ending of season 2 where we see the Mind Flayer's reflection sort of in the upside down, just watching over Hawkins. Cool. And the Mind Flayer is indeed one hell of a villain that defies the plot entirely. Okay, so remember when the Mind Flayer, I don't know how to phrase this without sounding like a creep, but the Mind Flayer and Will had sort of a Demogorgon baby creature thing, you know, when Will spits out that slimy thing into the bathroom sink, which later turns into a Demogorgon in season 2. That was pretty wild and also pretty weird. But then in season 2, the Mind Flayer isn't finished. It wants more of Will, so it possesses Will by entering him in its smoke form, so that Will can, you know, create these tunnels. While all this is happening, Vecna, of course, is resting in the abyss, waiting for the Mind Flayer to fail so he can have a shot at Hawkins. Because, well, you see, Vecna and the Mind Flayer made a bet that whoever can destroy the world wins. That's why they're taking turns when attacking Hawkins. But anyway, the Mind Flayer, whether in smoke form or when it turned into a meat flayer by possessing Bill and poisoning the rats and the people in town to then fuse into a giant meat monster, well, these were moments that were just more than scary. They felt really villain-like, and they felt all plot-breaking. What I mean is, the villain shapes the plot, like it takes over people's minds. Incidentally, causes Hopper to get captured by the Soviets. So it's plot changing. And if the Mind Flayer had succeeded, the show would have been over immediately. The world is destroyed. The end. That's why I called the highest tier plot destroyer 9000. Yeah, I wanted something more than definitely a villain, like something that's boss material, and this is what I came up with. And I only added the 9000 because it sounded cool. No bias in the 9000. So yeah, I'm gonna put the Mind Flayer in the plot destroyer 9000 tier in terms of villainness, even though it did disappoint me greatly in the last season. And I think it goes without saying that if we take the last season into account, almost every single villain would be ChatGPT tier. But there are a couple more plot destroyer 9000 villains, and no, Jack Sullivan was not one of them. Why would you even... That guy felt more like an NPC tier villain to me, seeing how obsessed he was with 11, like all the time. He had 2 inputs: find 11, kill 11. That's it. An NPC if I've ever seen one. Now, Billy, on the other hand, was a great villain. He had a before and after Mind Flayer arc. But in both instances, I'd put Billy into the definitely a villain category because I thought he was legitimately gonna run over those kids with his car. And after the Mind Flayer took over, that's when Billy's villain arc really went to the next level. Like, I feel like initially he was just a racist piece of crap, but then he turned into something truly evil. From hating on people to kidnapping people and feeding them to the monster in the dark. The only thing that's confusing me is, since the Mind Flayer was controlling him, does it really count as Billy, you know, the villain? It's like those horror movies where a guy does something horrific and then claims he was possessed by a demon. It's hard to prove, but also disprove. Did even a slight part of Billy actually want to hurt all those people? Did he at any point enjoy it? We can't really ever know for sure. Maybe he was completely gone. Maybe there was a bit of Billy left in him. But what I do know is that when 11 showed him the memories of his mother on the beach, he was able to resist. So he was still in there. And if he ever did try to fight it or not is unknown. But Mind Flayer taking Billy might even be a plot destroyer 9000 villain, since he single-handedly made 11 lose her powers. Without them, there is no 11 destroying a Coke can, and without no destroying of a Coke can, there is no Stranger Things. It can never be. We really needed more human villains that felt threatening, like Billy, and even Dr. Brenner, which I'll get to in a minute. But instead, we get Henry, who can't pull back a girl with his monster arm against a 4th grader and then starts crying. But he wasn't always like that. To Vecna's credit, the guy actually made me jump in my chair the first time I saw Chrissy run to a room and see her mother, using that stitching machine. And suddenly she turns and her head is super creepy, almost melted like, this monstery way. Season 4 Vecna was legitimately scary. He'd show up at a random funeral and slow the clock's down, and this kid, he sees the clock in the back room just slowly passing, and he knows he's cooked. How cool is that? Then in season 5, Vecna started telling everyone how he was going to end the world soon enough. Soon enough. So soon. Oh, so soon, baby. Just you wait. With kids by his side while they're all meditating together in candlelight. Yeah, well, I did add the chirping bird sounds and the ocean waves and the meditational soundscape because Vecna decided to use the power of calmness instead of shadow strike. That's what I call is appear in someone's mind, manipulate the environment, then kill them thing. Cool. No? Shadow Strike in and of itself kind of defies the plot. Therefore, Vecna from Season 4 was easily a plot destroyer 9000 tier of a villain, and I don't think Season 5 Vecna is the same guy as Season 4. In fact, I'm fairly certain even the actor later admitted that he did not in fact portray in the last season, and he was surprised that they had replaced. What am I saying? That was all a lie. Of course it was the same guy. I just can't get over how lame they wrote the whole Vecna Henry storyline. Okay, so as you can tell by my 599th time of mentioning Season 5, I did not like it. And if you want to hear me more as to why it sucked, you can check out my video, Why Stranger Things Season 5 Sucked. And that's why I just can't bring myself to score any villain from Season 5 higher than NPC tier. But for the sake of being thorough, let's just go through them all. And I'll start with the US Army, and I'll put them in the ChatGPT tier, because you know what? Even NPCs know how to aim. The demo dogs, blatantly programmed to be as dumb and useless as possible, unaware of anything that's happening around them. Even NPCs in stealth games don't feel this blind. Another ChatGPT tier. And I'm starting to see a pattern here. Anyway, how about the Demogorgons of Season 5? Well, if you ask the military, they say plot destroyer 9000 tier for sure, because they were getting rolled over. And if you asked literally anyone else, they probably have said, wait, they're Demogorgons? Did you mean Season 1? I'm fairly certain they were NPCs programmed to only take out soldiers. So NPC tier it is. And I don't even want to talk about Vecna and his plans. In fact, I don't think there even was a plan. There was not a single memorable moment of Vecna doing something cool other than maybe messing with Hopper's memory of 11. So whatever, I'll put him in the probably not NPC tier. But I'm not completely ruling the NPC thing out for him, just FYI. And Henry, he's straight out just a sad spin-off plant. Okay, so for Season 5 Mind Flayer, I went ahead and created a special tier just for it, right above ChatGPT tier. And I'm calling it Building, because that's all it was. It was a building with an open door for Holly to calmly walk out of, and then later on for the whole gang to enter and celebrate at. Literally party central. And last but not least, in Season 5, we have this guy, Andy. In case you forgot, he was the bully that beat up Dustin. And I just wanted to congratulate him from the bottom of my heart because that guy did more damage than every single creature combined this entire season. Actually, plot destroyer tier of villain in my opinion, because he was able to almost kill one of the main cast. And the writers themselves had to intervene to stop him from doing so. Like, they were only able to save him by adding a plot hole into the story. Because at no point do they ever explain how Dustin got away from them in the first place. The show's name, Loki, starts to make sense, Stranger Things, and with every new plot hole, they look at us and say, hey now, that was strange, wasn't it? No, it wasn't. That's just you being lazy. What do you mean? Okay, I'm done. Even Papa was a better villain than the Season 5 villains combined. He's practically the first villain we see, but also one of the deadliest if you think about it, killing anyone that's in his way of finding 11. Like the diner guy, for instance, who was just a chill dude wanting to help a lost child. Dr. Brenner is that guy we never see in real life, but we all deep down know exists somewhere doing something unethical or shady. Someone who has the entire government behind him, and nothing he ever does is considered illegal, because he already does the worst possible thing imaginable, like kidnapping children and experimenting on them. One of the scariest things for kids is usually the monster under their bed. That's always number one. But the second is being kidnapped or strangers in general. At least for me, I used to be terrified of being kidnapped. Even in high school, I'd read this story about this woman trying to help someone cross the road, and she was injected with a needle and then she disappeared or something. And I was terrified. I never helped anyone ever again. That was the end. I was literally in the city, broad daylight. An old man just approaches and says, "Hey, what time is it?" I had my phone in my hand and I had a wristwatch, but I just said, "I don't know," and started running away. That's how scared I was. So you can imagine my fear when I saw Dr. Brenner and the agents chase after the children. It was exciting, scary. A man in a suit with good hair that might just hurt your entire family because you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, this is a villain that screams Plot Destroyer 9000. And no, I'm not biased just because I had some past experience or trauma about abduction. How dare you? The guy is the very reason we have Eleven and Vecna. Like, he made the plot of Stranger Things, kind of. Also, look, it sounds trivial, but one mistake and you're out. Your bike jams, your leg cramps, you can't run for whatever reason, and Dr. Brenner will end you. And with that, the entire story is over. And remember this lady? Her name was Connie Fraser, Dr. Brenner's agent, you know, the one pulling the trigger. She too was giving me the creeps. The way she was always cold-heartedly taking out people was part of what kept me anxious with that whole Dr. Brenner chasing the kids arc. In fact, thanks to her, I'm never calling social services, like ever. Even if I found someone, I'd just take them to the police station and let the authorities handle the rest. Actually, they'll probably ask questions too. You know what? My eyesight is bad anyway. I have astigmatism, so I wouldn't be able to see anyone in the dark or anything. Or even if I was, in the diner working, I would have thought the sounds were some rats running around. And by the time I'd gotten close to 11, she probably would have gotten away. Like, from afar, it's just all blurry. It's just a blurry mess. Anyway, definitely a villain for me. Remember number 2 though? No, not that number 2. Wait, you still didn't go? Better have that coffee soon, friend. I was talking about that annoying kid from the lab though, the one with the angry face. Yeah, well, he was a bully. And he did bully 11, which in turn made Henry kill them all, kind of. But in the grand scheme of things, did he do any damage villain-wise? Or even instill fear to the viewer? I don't think so. I'll put him in the probably not NPC tier. And I know what you're thinking. What about the mayor from season 3, the guy who sold the mall site to the Soviets? Psych! I know you weren't thinking of him, but for the sake of being thorough again, let's just put him into the NPC tier. He was pretty lame. There is a villain that I forgot to mention though, a single guy. Well, single because his girlfriend died. You guessed it. Jason Carver, that cool basketball guy from season 4. This guy might actually be the epitome of evil because of how he was able to infect the town with panic and despair. Like, he's able to very quickly convince everyone that a satanic cult is actively causing harm and evidently drives people into mayhem. He's got guns, friends, and they're ready to kill other people. Human beings. This is exactly why entitlement can be so dangerous. People who think they're in the right, no matter what, are usually worse than literal monsters because they will go the extra mile to make sure someone pays with one single thought on their mind, and that is, I am right. That's a dangerous villain. And in case you forgot, because of him, Max almost dies. I mean, let's face it, she should have died anyway because, come on, she's practically dead here. How did she come back in season 5? I don't know. She wakes up from a coma and looks better than half the cast. Look, she's still got her makeup on. Really, guys? Not even gonna try to make her look sick? No? Okay. Anyway, so Jason, definitely a villain tier to me. I'll be honest though, I was so close to putting him in the Plot Destroyer 9000 tier, but in the end, everything he did just felt hollow for some reason. Last but not least, and I kept this hidden because I felt that these guys were the biggest villains in the entire history of the show, and I doubt anyone will ever agree with me, but here goes. Lonnie Byers, the dad of Will and Jonathan, Neil Hargrove, do I read that right? Hargrove? Sorry. Billy's dad, and then Troy Walsh. Now, these guys are particularly evil because they were the root of the entire arc, the pain. Anything and everything we see in the show stems from the fact that they were bad, very bad people. Lonnie, a dad who's abusive to his family, even calls Will slurs. It clearly played a crucial role in Jonathan feeling like an outcast all the time, and Will feeling lost and confused, which in turn caused Will to be taken to the Upside Down in the first place. He might have been the weakest of the kids in the entirety of Hawkins because because of his dad. If they had a good dad, like say Ted, I doubt Will would have been abducted, and the plot of Stranger Things immediately dies with it or changes immensely. A villain worthy of the plot destroyer 9000. Neil Hargrove, same as Lonnie, bad dad energy causing nothing but trauma. Although I feel he's more of a probably not NPC level of villain, since Billy never did any serious damage until he was taken by the mind flare. And finally, Troy. But wait, Troy's not a villain, he's just a school bully. Look, if you've never had a bully, good for you for being popular. But I still remember hiding my lunch money in my tissue pack because the bullies would go through my backpack looking for it. While Troy may seem like a harmless villain, just someone who steals your lunch money or, intimidates you, calls you slurs, it goes without saying that the psychological effect he has on Mike and Will is something that haunts them throughout their lives. Also, did I say harmless? Because I just remembered that this guy literally tried to kill Mike by forcing him to jump off the cliff. If Mike died there, the show is practically over because Holly hadn't grown enough yet to take over the main story. That's changed in season 5, unfortunately. Troy should have been put in juvenile for attempted murder or something. Sadistic little piece of shit. And these real life bullies do exist. We see them every day in the news or on Reddit. Kids literally hurting their peers in ways that make you say, yep, well, that was enough Reddit for today and tomorrow. In fact, let me just turn off the phone for the rest of the month and call in sick for work for a week. And ultimately, the fear he instills in Will is sort of what pushes him into hiding his true identity, which in turn is what Vecna uses to wear him down. Tell him that he sucks and that he can't fight back. Will ends up never opening up to anyone until the very end. And boy, do I wish we had Troy this last season. Maybe he could have stopped Will from opening up with one last bit of bullying. And no, I'm not condoning bullying, but I just, Vecna could have, had the upper hand, at least for a little bit. The fight would have looked more realistic if Will broke down on his knees, last second, and he's crying to his mother. He admits to her that he lied or something, and he's out of the fight. Vecna is almost winning because Will is not there anymore to help them. There's tension, there's sadness, but somehow the gang pulls it off. I don't care. So that's why I will put Troy also into the plot destroyer 9000 tier, because when he was around, the stakes were at least somewhat high. He deserves it, but not his friends though. They're just bully wannabes. Anyway, let me know what you think of the tier list. Is it accurate? Did I miss anyone? That bad? Sorry. And yes, I did think about adding Nancy to the tier list, but I guess her heart was in the right place when she was shooting like 6 human beings. You've just watched Fax Machine 9000. Thank you so much. It's still... Okay, come on. Okay, buddy.